So, if you want to stick around a couple of more minutes, why don't we do a Thor bloat? Welcome to Northwoods Kindred. I'm your Go the Bodvar, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the things that you can do to actually perform a solitary bloat. So, for starters, it's important to know that there are essentially 3 different bloat settings that you would be in. And it's important to distinguish them because not everybody does. The first one would be your solitary bloat, and those are those times when you just need to say thanks, make an offering, ask for help, or get through a tough situation. The second would be small groups, where you have your SIPA, your STAT, or your Kindred. You have your smaller groups of people gathering to bloat, and we'll get to those down the road. And then the third would be a large gathering, where you would go to an all-thing event or a large group gathering. The dynamics of the bloat are going to have to change, because if you were to do the exact same things that you do in a small Kindred bloat with a larger group, it would be endless. It could literally take hours, and that's not the point. The gods got more important things to do, and so do we. Put it down in the comments. Have you ever done a solitary bloat? Now, there's very few of us who are in this way, who follow this religion, that didn't come from one of the Abrahamic religions or another religion. So a lot of times I'll kind of equate one to another, because that's the world we grew up in. In the case of like my children, they were brought up ASATRU and they've never known anything else. That's a different conversation entirely. But we want to talk about the bloat and why we do it. And in the Abrahamic religions, it could be almost the solitary bloat that we're doing now can be pretty much any situation where you would pray, where you would want to give a prayer and ask for help or ask for forgiveness or ask for thanks or whatever the goal would be on the Abrahamic side. For us, primarily, it is for help, guidance, knowledge of our path, support in one way or another if we've already exhausted our resources. But don't look at it as we're asking the gods for a freebie, that we're just going to give them something and we're going to get a freebie, because it doesn't work like that. So some of the reasons that you might want to do a solitary bloat: go ahead and push greed and all those things out of the way. We're not going to go to the gods and ask them to win the lottery. They don't work like that. We shouldn't work like that either. But if you have a sick parent or someone who you're close to is sick and you want to ask for some healing, or you want to ask for some help, or you have a tough time or challenge ahead, you don't know how to solve it, and you're asking for guidance or wisdom, those are the kind of things that you would want to do a solitary bloat. And never neglect that occasionally something really good happens to you. Don't neglect the opportunity to go say thank you for that, because they probably had a hand in it. The Norns are going to weave your fate the way they weave your fate, and the gods may or may not have control over that, but just saying thanks goes a long way. Now, in order to actually conduct a personal bloat, it's going to require a couple of tools. Now, for full disclosure, right now we're in my vey, which is a dedicated space and has been for a few years, but you don't need to have a vey in order to perform ritual. You can do it on the spot, anywhere you are. I have done it in every climbing place on this planet. So without getting too deep in the weeds on the tools, we'll cover those when we get there. All you really need is a boley and a hammer. Everything else you can gain in time. Hey, can you think of any other tools that I might have forgot that are absolutely essential to doing a solitary bloat? Throw it down in the comments and let everybody else know if there's something that you do that you think is absolutely essential. But let's talk about the ritual itself. And for starters, the first part of the ritual is called the procession. Maybe you've heard of a funeral procession. And it's that point where you walk from where you are to where you're going. And that is the time where you get to lose all of that pedestrian garbage that's weighing you down. You get to forget about all of that, and you get to start feeling the cold air or the warm air or the raindrops, and you get to smell the flowers and the trees and the air, and you hear the animals and the ravens and all these things. It's the point where you get to walk from point A to point B and actually get connected to your environment on the way. Then you're not wasting valuable time during ceremony trying to get connected when you've already established that connection on the way there. The procession is a very important part of the ritual. Now, if you don't have a dedicated space like I have this vey, you're going to have to create one in order to do the ritual. And it doesn't take much. You're going to need a horg, a stali, an altar, whatever you want to call it. You can have that indoors, or you can create one outdoors. You can use an old stump, a log. You can bring a bucket. You can use whatever it takes in order to elevate your boli and your ritual tools up off the ground so that there's a center point, a point of focus. Historically, in a bloat, that would be the center rock or the stone where they would kill their sacrifice and the blood would drain over them. But we don't live in that world anymore. So just bring something to elevate it up off the ground to show a center point of focus. An old plastic flower pot or a Homer bucket from Home Depot works beautifully, especially if you have a nice cloth that can drape over the sides and cover it. The next part of the ritual, the second part, is the hallowing. And if you have a dedicated space like I have here, you don't have to hallow it every time. I do because I'm always bringing new people to ritual and I'd like them to see the whole process from beginning to end. But this is a dedicated space and it'll always be one. If you're just on the fly working it in the woods somewhere or in a park or in a public recreation room or wherever you happen to be, then you're going to want to hallow that space every time for use for that ritual. And that's done by simply opening up the four corners, north, east, south, and west. You can come up with your own saying. One that I find to be very useful is simply, holy forces to the north, form a shield wall, and protect the sacred bay. And just swap that north out with east, south, and west, and you've done it. Some people hollow above and below. That's entirely up to you. That's your decision to make. The third part of this ritual is going to be invitation. Very simple. All you do is you call to the god or goddess or wights or Disa, Totterman, elves, whoever you're giving bloat to. You just call to them and you ask them. You invite them. It's an invitation. Some people call it an invocation, but invocation to me sounds like a demand. And I'm not in any position to demand that the gods show up. I can invite them, and if they do, and they let their presence known to me, then I'm more than happy to give them the libation or the offering. If they don't show up, I'm giving the offering anyway, and hoorah for the local wights because they get it. Now we've built our space. We have poured our offering into the boli. We have invited the god, goddess, etc. Now we want to ask them to bless this offering, bless our efforts, bless us with their presence. And we can ask for this blessing as you would ask your grandfather or your grandmother to have a chat with you. You can ask politely as an ancestor, as we are related to our gods. And it doesn't hurt to throw in some flattery either. If you're doing a bloat to Freya, it would probably help to recite some of the cool things she does for mankind, the things that you know about. Let her know that you're familiar with who she is. The same thing with Odin or with Thor, or Heimdall. You want to tell them that I am familiar with your contribution to my life, and it's very much appreciated. So we would like to offer to you, and we would like you to bless this offering so that we can share it with you. So that would be the blessing part. That's the part that really trips up most people. And that's the part where you see people reading it out of a book or reading it out of a manuscript, and it doesn't come from the heart. It should come from the heart. I will never bloat off of a piece of paper. I would rather stand there silently just feeling grateful than to recite words that were written by someone else, if that makes sense. So that blessing is a very important part. And after that blessing is where any other work might take place that you need to have done, such as the blessing of a piece of steel, or the swearing of an oath, or any other things that you want to do. Generally in a solitary bloat, it's done a little bit quicker. There's not a whole lot of extra work that has to get done. It's a point where you just need communication. Consider it as, in modern terms, a quick text, as opposed to a long phone call or a video conference call. So just consider it like a quick text, like, hey, love you, thanks for the help, talk to you later. So the portion of the blessing after we flatter the gods and invite them to bless the thing is we have to take that blessing internal, and we'll do that by taking a sip out of the boli or a sip out of the horn or whatever we have. Also, we share that blessing externally. Externally, we'll share that with the Sigensprek, which is a blessing sprig. The Sigensprek is important because it makes the connection between this ritual and the world tree. And the world tree, of course, is blessed and sprinkled with water by the Norns daily. So it kind of brings everything full circle and makes that whole connection by using that Sigensprek. But if you're not blessing anything, any items or any other people, then you don't necessarily need to harvest that. What I do in that circumstance is I'll usually just dip my hand and I'll make a hammer sign on my heart, and that's good enough without actually having to harm the tree. I also give that tool back to the tree every time and give it a blessing of Gebo, a gift for a gift. I give it a sprinkling of mead or wine or whatever that libation is in exchange for its help as being one of my ritual tools. So after this blessing, customary, you will gift the tree with a little bit of that offering, and then you're going to pour that offering out on the ground. Just you don't finish it. You don't get to chug it. That's not for you. You took in your sip. Now, after the blessing, and you've done what needed to be done, and you've communicated with the deity, it's time to close the ritual. And we close it by, of course, fulfilling our agreement with the tree for the blessing sprig. We give them some libation, and we close the ritual, and we pour out the remaining offering on the ground, which is a really valuable reason why we use a liquid offering like a wine, mead, beer, milk, juice, something that's valuable, helps sustain us, but we can pour it on the ground and it doesn't leave a trace. It's not like leaving a hunk of steak or a biscuit on the ground, which are suitable offerings in a certain environment, but not appropriate for all bloats, which is why in modern times we've gone to an alcoholic type of libation. I mean, if you can't be around alcohol for one reason or another, milk and juice are suitable substitutes. Now, other suitable offerings could be anything of virtual value in today's world or the old world. I have offered silver coins. I have offered weapons, things like that. And usually to make that offering, I will dig a hole and I'll bury it. I'll put it into the earth and I will never see it again. Those are absolutely suitable offerings, but the offering should have some value to you. If you found a coin on the ground and you're like, hey, this one's for Thor, and chuck it in the woods, I'm not sure that's got a lot of value. It seems a little kind of like phoning it in, you know what I mean? So it should be something with some value and something that should be a little bit of ceremony to it. But this is just my belief. This is just how I do it. If you're doing that and it works for you, then by all means, keep going. And the final stage of the ritual is going to be closing. You have to close the ritual if it's in a random spot somewhere that you just picked out for that solitary bloat. Again, if you're in a dedicated vey like this, you don't have to close it, but I always do, especially in company, because I like the ceremony of beginning, middle, and end. So I always close it. I always bid the gods a good, safe journey home, as well as the whites, and then I close to the four corners just as I opened them. That's entirely up to you. I wouldn't want to leave a circle open in a space that I don't plan to return to often. Now, the minimum items you need in order to do this are you're going to need a receptacle to hold that offering. You're going to need the offering. You're going to need something to set it on, a horg of some sort, and generally you're going to need some sort of a hammer in order to bless it, because that's the traditional way. A hammer was used to bless all manner of things. Maybe not necessarily in the name of Thor, but in the name of protection and service to the gods. Now, this vey that we're sitting in now is not only a place for ritual. In a lot of cases, that ritual is just kinship. We're out here, we're roasting s'mores over the fire, we're having a barbecue, we'll bring a table out and set up food, we'll just be out here, we'll hang out, we'll drink together, we'll camp in the field next to the vey, and we'll sleep out under the stars. We do all these things as a kindred, and a lot of this brotherhood and kinship takes place in the vey, not necessarily during a formal ritual. It doesn't have to be a dedicated space that you can only go in when you're doing ritual, because kinship and love and friendship and family is a ritual all in itself. Why don't we do a Thor bloat? Why don't we thank Thor for his guidance in creating this channel and connecting with all you awesome heathens? Now that I went through all of that and I made it seem way too complicated, stick around for just a moment and I will do an uninterrupted bloat to Thor, solitary, just for you, so that you can see how simple it really is to just go out and thank the gods for all that they do for us. Holy forces of the North, I ask you, come forth, form a shield wall and protect the sacred veil. Holy forces to the east, I ask you, come forth, form a shield wall and protect the sacred veil. Holy forces to the south, I ask you to come forth, form a shield wall and protect the sacred veil. Holy forces of the west, I ask you come forth, form a shield wall to protect the sacred veil. Thor, son of Odin and Earth, Redbeard, friend of man, slayer of Ettins, defender of men and gods, defender of all of Midgard, and patron to those who do the same. Today I offer you not blood as in days of yore, but libations that we know you enjoy, out of friendship, honor, and kinship with you, mighty Thor. Hail. I thank you for your presence, and I thank you for all the gifts that you've given us along the way, in the building of the kindred, in the leading of the folk, in the raising of our family, and all the little things, all the times you were there when we forgot to notice. I thank you for those. I ask that you continue to bless us, that you bless this offering, and that you bless those people who are finding us, those people who we are helping to exchange with the gods, to live in kinship, to make offerings, to build kindreds, and to further the name of all the Aesir and Vanir as we come back and re-emerge as a dominant force in Midgard. Hail the Redbeard, hail Thor. Thor, I ask that you allow me to bless these tools of your service and the service of the other gods, that they may serve the folk and the people, that we may lead in ritual, that we may be a small part of the new emergence of the ASATRU faith and lead people into the future, especially those that are stuck in the past. I thank you for these blessings. Hail Thor. I bless these tools in the name of Thor. I share this blessings with our fallen kinsmen from Gallahorn. And I thank you. The gift demands a gift. Thor, I thank you for these blessings. All that is left in this bowlie is for you. Hail Thor. Thor, I thank you for your presence and your blessings, not only now, but everything leading up until now and everything moving forward. I'll try to live by the example that you set for us, do right by the folk, do right by my family, defend those that need defending, help those that need help, and grow the folk whenever and wherever I can. I bid you good journey home, and I ask that if you see any of the folk, any of the gods, the Disa, the Whites, or any of the other supernatural spirits on your way or on your journeys, that you tell them there are still good folk in Midgard. There are still people who honor the old ways and honor the old gods. We do it in a new light, in a new time, in a new place, but we honor them just the same. Hail to you, Thor, and I bid you good journey home. Holy forces of the North, we thank you for your protection. We bid you safe journey home. Holy forces to the East, I thank you for your protection, and I bid you a safe journey home. Holy forces to the South, I thank you for your protection, and I bid you a safe journey home. Holy forces to the West, I thank you for your protection, and I bid you a safe journey home. And this bloat has ended. Get some tools together and go bloat. But be cautious. Odin did warn, it is better unasked than to offer too much. So do it sparingly and doing it for the right reasons. From the Northwoods Kindred, I'm your Goldie Bodvar, and I'll leave you with this. May the new year bring you happiness, kinship, and inspiration. Hail the folk.